children's stories, and you go on the adventures yourself as a child. It takes you into a sort of multitude of different worlds. My sister and brother and I, we always used to go off and camp and pretend we were...
Laura Lopes, Queen Camilla's daughter, has always lived away from the royal spotlight, but not anymore. After years of hushed whispers and unanswered speculation, she's finally spoken, confirming the very rumors insiders desperately tried to dismiss. Her words have sent shockwaves through royal circles, pulling her mother's world into a storm of questions no one saw coming. So, what exactly did she reveal? And why now? Buckle up as we dive into the truth that could forever change the royal conversation. The whisper that wouldn't die. For decades, the story of Queen Camilla has been told in fragments, sometimes as scandal, sometimes as gossip, and sometimes as prophecy. Long before she ever set foot inside Buckingham Palace as queen consort, whispers surrounded her like a crown, made not of jewels but of shadows. The whispers were never loud, never official, but they lingered, echoing through newspapers, dinner parties, and even inside the palace walls themselves. And at the heart of them all was one persistent question: what does Camilla really want? To many, she was the woman who had stolen the heart of a future king. To others, she was a survivor who endured public hatred, tabloid cruelty, and years of scrutiny only to emerge as one of the most powerful figures in Britain. But behind the public image of resilience, there has always been a darker suspicion that Camilla's rise was not only about love or duty, but about power, real power. The kind that does not just make you queen, but secures your family's place in history. The rumors began in the 1980s when Camilla was still seen as Charles's forbidden companion. Even then, royal insiders whispered that she wielded unusual influence over him, that she could steer his decisions in ways no advisor, no courtier, and not even Diana herself could. When Diana famously described their marriage as a bit crowded, she wasn't just speaking of Charles's affection for Camilla. Many interpreted her words as a warning that Camilla's presence was not fleeting, but strategic. As the years rolled on, the whispers only grew louder. When Diana died in 1997, questions surfaced again. Would Camilla now step into the light? And if she did, would she bring only herself, or her family, her children, and her inner circle into the orbit of royal power? Each public step she took seemed to fuel the narrative. By the time Charles married her in 2005, those rumors had hardened into belief among some that Camilla was not simply a companion, but a strategist playing the long game. The coronation of Charles in 2023 only reignited those suspicions. While the spotlight was supposed to shine on the king, many noticed how comfortably Camilla carried herself, how assuredly she moved in spaces once thought untouchable. She had survived scandal, outlived Diana's legacy in the public eye, and silenced critics who once said she would never be accepted. But still, the whispers continued. Was this acceptance enough for her, or was there more she wanted? And the most persistent of those whispers was the one that cut deepest. It suggested that Camilla's ambitions did not end with herself, that she wanted not just a crown on her own head, but influence that stretched to her children, her family, and perhaps even a dynasty parallel to the Windsors, a dynasty where her bloodline, not Diana's, would quietly rise. This was the whisper that would not die, a whisper that stalked her through decades of headlines and that, now, has found new life, because for the very first time, it has been echoed by someone closer to her than anyone else, her own daughter. And if gossip could be dismissed, what happens when the echo comes from her own daughter? Keep watching. Laura's words changed everything. Laura's accidental confession. The confirmation didn't come from critics or commentators. It came from Camilla's own daughter, Laura Lopes, and in a single sentence, she may have revealed more than she ever intended.
That's exactly how Laura Lopes, daughter of Queen Camilla, found herself in the center of a royal disaster.
For years, speculation about Camilla's ambitions had been brushed aside as gossip, but when the words came from within her family, they carried a weight that could not easily be dismissed. It happened in the most ordinary of settings. Laura, who has always been careful to keep her life separate from the palace spotlight, was engaged in what should have been a harmless conversation. She is known as an art curator, a mother, a woman far removed from the daily dramas of the monarchy. Yet in that moment of casual honesty, she uttered a remark that instantly shifted the tone of every rumor surrounding her mother. She reportedly said, "Well, Mum's making sure the family will soon have their place." It was not a proclamation. It wasn't even said with intent to shock, but that was precisely why it struck so deeply. The phrasing suggested something more deliberate than pride. It hinted at planning, as if a strategy was already in motion. What place was she referring to? And why describe it as something her mother was making sure of, rather than letting it happen naturally? The words spread quickly, dissected by royal watchers, journalists, and online communities. Some dismissed it as a slip of the tongue, no different from a daughter speaking proudly of her mother's success. Yet others heard something darker in Laura's casual phrasing, confirmation that the whispers of Camilla's hidden ambitions were not fantasy at all, but conversations taking place within her very household. What made the remark so powerful was its source. Laura has never been a figure who courts attention. Unlike her stepbrothers William and Harry, she grew up away from palace walls. She has rarely spoken publicly about her mother's royal role, preferring the quiet of galleries to the chaos of headlines. And that is precisely why her words felt unfiltered, uncalculated, almost too honest. For a moment, it was as if the mask had slipped. The carefully guarded walls of Buckingham Palace cracked just enough for the public to glimpse what might be unfolding behind closed doors. A lifetime of rumors about Camilla's ambitions suddenly had a voice attached to them, one that could not be ignored. And if Laura's words were more than a slip, were they Camilla's plan revealed? Keep watching. Reading between the lines. When Laura Lopes remarked that her mother was making sure the family will soon have their place, it sounded simple, almost innocent. But in the world of the monarchy, where every phrase is weighed and every gesture interpreted, words like these are rarely taken lightly. The question that now hangs in the air is unavoidable. Was this just a casual slip, or the kind of truth that can only spill out when it has been spoken often at home? To understand the gravity of Laura's comment, one must consider Camilla's history. For decades, she has been underestimated by those who believed she was content to remain in the background. Yet time and again, she has proven her ability to quietly shift the balance of power. From the scandal-ridden days of being Charles's companion in the shadows to her gradual acceptance into the royal fold, Camilla's journey has been one of persistence.
I count on the loving help of my darling wife, Camilla.
Patience, and remarkable strategic timing. It is not difficult to imagine that she may have also been positioning her children in subtle but meaningful ways. Indeed, traces of this strategy can already be seen. Laura and her brother, Tom Parker Bowles, have never been official royals, yet they have often been given places of prominence at major events. At Charles's coronation, both stood proudly among the most senior figures of the family. While not wearing crowns or titles, their presence was undeniable, a quiet statement that Camilla's children were no longer mere bystanders, but part of the royal picture. For many observers, Laura's remark now casts a new light on those moments. Were they simply acts of courtesy from King Charles, or were they steps in a longer plan, each public appearance laying the groundwork for greater acceptance of Camilla's family within royal life? It becomes harder to dismiss the possibility when her own daughter has now voiced it so plainly. Critics argue that Laura's words could not have come from nowhere. It is unlikely that she would invent such a notion. More plausibly, it reflects conversations at home, where Camilla may have spoken openly of securing a lasting place for her children and grandchildren. And if that is true, then Laura's slip is not just an accident. It is a window into Camilla's private ambitions. Still, defenders of the Queen Consort insist it may have been nothing more than a proud daughter speaking loosely, without the polished caution expected of those within the royal circle. Yet even they cannot deny the unfortunate truth. Once spoken, such words cannot be taken back. They hang in the air, forcing every public appearance, every seating arrangement, and every invitation to be scrutinized in a new way. Laura's remark has, in effect, forced the public to read between the lines of Camilla's every move. What was once dismissed as a coincidence now looks deliberate. What once seemed like quiet support now appears strategic. The question is no longer whether Camilla is securing her own position. It is whether she is paving the way for a dynasty of her own making. A family rising in the shadows. If Laura's words truly were a slip, then they point to a reality that has been quietly unfolding in plain sight. The steady rise of Camilla's children, Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles. Though not royal by blood, their presence has grown ever more visible, their appearances at key events more frequent, and their proximity to power harder to ignore. What once seemed like mere courtesy gestures by King Charles now looks, in retrospect, like deliberate steps in a broader plan. Take the coronation of 2023, for example.
The coronation of King Charles III. Here now is Savannah Guthrie.
Much attention focused on Charles and Camilla's historic moment, but eagle-eyed observers noticed something unusual. While Prince William and Catherine stood at the heart of the ceremony, flanked by their children, Laura and Tom were positioned with notable prominence. They did not carry titles, nor did they wear crowns, but their placement sent a quiet message. They were part of the inner circle, woven into the pageantry of royal life. It was a powerful symbol, an acknowledgement of belonging that no tabloid gossip could erase. And it was not the first time. Over the years, both Laura and Tom have been seen at high-profile royal gatherings, including Trooping the Color, royal weddings, and state occasions. Often, their presence was explained away as family courtesy, but each time, their faces became more familiar to the public and their roles more normalized. Slowly, the idea of Camilla's children being part of the royal fabric stopped feeling strange. Tom Parker Bowles, meanwhile, has cultivated influence in his own way. A respected food critic and author, he moves easily among Britain's elite, building networks that extend far beyond the kitchen. He has dined with aristocrats, advised on food culture, and earned a reputation that brings him into circles of power where connections matter just as much as titles. Laura, an art curator, has done much the same, carving out a career in the refined world of galleries and exhibitions where patrons often overlap with the upper echelons of British society. When compared to the carefully managed rise of William and Catherine's children, the difference is striking. George, Charlotte, and Louis are being groomed with precision, each public appearance calculated to reinforce the image of continuity. Their presence is never casual, it is strategic, ensuring the public sees them as the future of the crown. In contrast, Laura and Tom's appearances feel looser, less scripted, yet that very informality makes them appear more natural, more quietly embedded. And so, two parallel tracks have begun to form. On one side, William and Catherine present a polished, modern family destined to inherit the throne. On the other hand, Camilla's children appear steadily, almost unassumingly, in the royal picture. Without titles, but not without influence. It is this duality that makes Laura's slip so unsettling. If Camilla truly is ensuring her family will have their place, then perhaps these public moments were never mere courtesy. Perhaps they were milestones in a quiet ascent, a rise in the shadows, preparing the public to accept what might come next. Stay tuned, because what followed shook the palace to its core. The palace in panic. When Laura Lopes's words escaped into the public domain, Buckingham Palace found itself in an uncomfortable position. The comment was not from a political commentator, not from an outspoken critic, but from the Queen Consort's own daughter. That alone made it impossible to dismiss outright. Inside the palace walls, where every sentence is weighed and every slip examined, the question was immediate. Had Laura simply spoken carelessly, or had she revealed something the institution had been trying to keep tightly contained? For the royal staff, the timing could not have been worse. The monarchy, already walking a delicate line in the modern age, relies on strict control of narratives. Every press release, every photograph, every word from a royal mouthpiece is carefully curated. To have an unguarded remark from a family member outside the inner circle was a nightmare scenario. According to whispers from insiders, private aides rushed to assess the damage. Could the remark be softened, Could it be explained away as nothing more than family pride? Behind closed doors, however, the mood was less forgiving. Courtiers have long memories, and many could not help but connect Laura's words to the decades of rumors that trailed Camilla. To them, it seemed less like a daughter's mistake and more like the slip of a truth too casually spoken. If Camilla really was making sure her family would soon have their place, then the monarchy's carefully balanced hierarchy was being threatened from within. King Charles himself was said to have been placed in an awkward position. On the one hand, he has always been protective of Camilla and, by extension, her children, who have lived much of their adult lives under scrutiny they never sought. On the other, he is king, a custodian of the crown whose duty is to ensure the institution survives beyond him. To ignore the potential implications of Laura's remark would risk accusations of weakness, yet to confront it directly could deepen suspicions that Camilla's influence is outpacing its limits. Princess Anne, known for her blunt pragmatism, reportedly made her feelings clear. While no words have been officially confirmed, palace observers note that Anne has little patience for blunders that tarnish the crown. It is not difficult to imagine her warning Charles that such a slip, if left unchecked, could spiral into a narrative of disunity and hidden agendas. Ultimately, the palace moved as it always does in moments of quiet crisis: silence, followed by subtle redirection. No statement was issued. No official correction came. Instead, attention was quickly shifted toward upcoming engagements and royal duties, burying the remark under layers of new headlines. Yet, among staff and insiders, the unease lingered. Because once spoken, Laura's words could not be unsaid. They floated above the palace like a cloud no amount of press management could entirely clear away. And in their silence, Buckingham Palace confirmed what many already suspected.
This comes following an informal peace summit between the Duke of Sussex's team and Buckingham Palace officials.
The remark had struck a nerve. And if Buckingham Palace could bury the comment in headlines, how could William and Catherine bury the fear it stirred? Keep watching, because their reaction revealed far more than silence ever could. William and Catherine caught off guard. If the palace staff felt unsettled by Laura Lopes's slip, the reaction behind the doors of Kensington Palace was even more pointed. For William and Catherine, the remark struck not only at the institution they will one day lead, but also at the heart of their private fears for their children's future. William, who has spent much of his adult life preparing for the inevitability of kingship, has always been cautious about family dynamics inside the monarchy. He lived through the turbulence of his parents' marriage, saw firsthand how Camilla was cast as a villain in the public eye, and witnessed how narratives can be reshaped with time. But Laura's words reopened an old wound, the suspicion that Camilla's influence could one day interfere with his rightful place as king. In William's eyes, the monarchy depends on clarity. There is one throne, one line of succession, one future path for the crown. For Camilla's daughter to suggest that her family will soon have their place sounded dangerously close to blurring those lines. It was, William reportedly felt, a potential challenge to the primacy of his own bloodline, the line of Diana, of himself, and most importantly, of George, Charlotte, and Louise.
Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis attended a service at Crathy Kirk Church on the Balmoral estate in Scotland.
Catherine's reaction, though gentler in tone, was no less concerned. She has long been praised for her ability to bring stability and calm into the royal fold. Yet even she could not ignore the implications of Laura's slip. For Catherine, the monarchy is fragile, a centuries-old institution surviving only because it adapts with care. Any suggestion of Camilla carving out a dynasty for her own children threatened that delicate balance. Her worry was not only about power struggles in the abstract, but about the overshadowing of her children. George, already stepping into the role of future king, has been carefully introduced to public life. Charlotte has been celebrated for her poise, Louis for his charm. Every moment of their upbringing has been managed to prepare them for royal duty. If Camilla's children and grandchildren were to be elevated alongside them, Catherine feared it could confuse the public narrative. Who truly represents the monarchy's future? The heirs of William and Catherine, or the bloodline of Camilla. Privately, the couple are believed to have discussed the need for vigilance. For William, that meant ensuring the line of succession remained untouchable. For Catherine, it meant protecting the monarchy's image as unified, not fractured. Between them, there was quiet frustration that just as the monarchy seemed to be stabilizing after years of scandal, Camilla's family had become the source of fresh uncertainty. Outwardly, William and Catherine carried on as they always do, poised, smiling, unshaken. But behind closed doors, Laura's comment hung in the air like an uninvited guest. It was not simply about what she had said, but about what it revealed. That Camilla's family might see themselves not as outsiders, but as rightful players in a future the public believed belonged to William's children alone. And for Britain's future king and queen, that was a thought they could not ignore. Anne and Charles, the confrontation. If William and Catherine's unease remained behind palace walls, Princess Anne's reaction was far more direct. Known throughout her life as the most practical and no-nonsense member of the royal family, Anne has little patience for rumors, especially those that threaten the crown's integrity. When Laura Lopes's remark began circulating in the press, Anne reportedly wasted no time in addressing the issue head-on. For her, silence was not an option. The confrontation is said to have taken place not during a public event, but in one of those private family meetings where tempers flare behind closed doors. Anne, with her trademark bluntness, demanded clarity from Camilla. Was it true, she asked, that the queen consort was quietly carving out space for her children within the monarchy? Was Laura's remark simply careless, or had she revealed plans being spoken aloud within Camilla's household? Camilla, never one to bow easily under pressure, is believed to have defended herself. She may have argued that her children had every right to attend family occasions, that their presence was a matter of personal support rather than political strategy. Yet Anne's pointed questions cut deeper. If it was only about family pride, why had Laura spoken with such certainty? Why use the phrase "making sure" as though influence were being exercised behind the scenes? King Charles found himself in the most difficult position of all. On one side stood his sister, the woman he has long trusted for her loyalty to the crown.
And now sister-in-law, Princess Anne. Here, I'll separate fact from fiction, gossip from gospel.
Whose judgment is rarely clouded by emotion. On the other side was Camilla, the partner he had waited decades to marry, the woman he had fought to legitimize in the eyes of both the public and the institution. For Charles, the choice was agonizing: defend his wife's honor or protect the crown's long-term stability. According to whispers from insiders, the discussion was tense, even heated. Anne pressed the point that the monarchy could not afford fresh divisions at a time when public trust was fragile. The slightest perception of Camilla promoting her children risked fueling narratives of self-interest and undermining William's future reign. Charles, torn, reportedly urged calm. He may not have directly reprimanded Camilla, but those close to the palace believe he took subtle steps to contain the fallout. In the weeks that followed, Laura and Tom's visibility noticeably dimmed. Invitations were fewer, seating positions less prominent. It was as though an invisible hand had pulled them back into the shadows, ensuring that the public eye returned to William, Catherine, and their children. No official statement was made, but the shift was unmistakable. For Charles, this was the quiet compromise. No open rebuke of Camilla, but a measured act of protection for the monarchy's future. For Anne, it was proof that the crown still came before personal ties. And for Camilla, it was a reminder that while her influence was vast, it was not limitless. The confrontation may never be spoken of openly, but its effects still linger, an invisible line drawn within the royal household, marking the boundaries of ambition. And if one remark could redraw invisible lines inside the palace, what happens when those lines threaten the crown itself? Keep watching, because the stakes only grow higher from here. What this means for the monarchy. Laura Lopes's casual remark may have been only a few words, but the ripple effect has been enormous. In those words, many see the outline of a hidden power struggle within the monarchy, a clash not only of personalities, but of futures. The royal family has always relied on unity, at least in appearance, to survive scandal and shifting public opinion. Yet Camilla's supposed ambitions for her children introduce a dangerous fracture. If her family is quietly pushed into greater visibility, the monarchy risks creating competing centers of influence. One line led by William and Catherine, the rightful heirs, and another subtly tied to Camilla's bloodline. For William, the threat is clear. His reign depends on a smooth transfer of authority and an unquestionable claim to the crown's legacy. Any perception that Camilla's family is being elevated could muddy that picture, casting doubt over the clarity of succession. Catherine, too, fears for the image of their children. George, Charlotte, and Louis have been carefully raised as the monarchy's future.
Prince William and Princess Kate have unveiled their family princes George and Louis and Princess Charlotte.
If Camilla's grandchildren are pushed forward, the spotlight becomes dangerously divided. And for Charles, this moment highlights the fragility of his reign. He has fought for decades to secure Camilla's acceptance, but if that acceptance begins to undermine the institution itself, history may judge him harshly. So what does this mean for the monarchy? At its core, it raises a question the crown cannot easily answer. Can two families share influence without sowing division? Or is this the beginning of a struggle that could weaken the throne William is destined to inherit? Perhaps Laura's slip was nothing. Or perhaps it was the first glimpse of the monarchy's most dangerous secret, the battle for power within its own walls. The question that remains. In the end, it all circles back to one moment. Laura Lopes speaking casually, perhaps without thought, letting words slip that ignited a storm. Mum's making sure the family will soon have their place. Was it harmless chatter, or did it reveal the conversations whispered behind closed doors of Clarence House? For those inside the palace, the comment has already left its mark. Staff scramble to control narratives. William and Catherine watch warily, guarding the future of their children. Princess Anne presses for clarity, while Charles is forced into the impossible role of balancing loyalty to his wife with duty to the crown. And Camilla? She remains as enigmatic as ever, her public face composed, her private ambitions left to speculation. But the real question lingers beyond the palace gates. What happens if Laura's slip was not an accident? What if it was the crack in the wall, the unfiltered glimpse into a plan carefully concealed for years? Could this be the opening chapter of a hidden struggle for influence, one that places Camilla's family against the heirs of Diana? The monarchy survives on perception, on the belief that the line of succession is unshakable. Yet in a single remark, that certainty has been unsettled. So the question remains for Britain and for the world watching. Was Laura's slip nothing more than careless chatter, or the moment history will remember as the day the palace walls began to crack? So what do you think? Did Queen Camilla's daughter finally confirm the rumors of hidden ambition, or was it just careless chatter? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe and share.